Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here, and it's time for updated Oscar predictions for the month of December. Sadly, Brother Bro is not joining us today. He will be back to react to the Oscar shortlists, which are coming up on the 21st. But because this channel is in dire need of an updated predictions video, and because over the holiday season it's going to be hard to put out more prediction content, I figure let's just do a rather quick, rather breezy Oscar predictions update. Gonna do just the above the line categories in this video. Below the line predictions will come out sometime after the shortlist, I don't know when. So for Best Picture, I think I'm putting Oppenheimer at #1 right now. So here's what's going on, really. Poor Things is not really demonstrating itself to be as strong as Barbie, Killers, and Oppenheimer. I mean, look, can things turn around? Sure, I guess, but I think there are a couple other movies that just have a better case for them right now. The audience scores are looking good, I will say that. 8.5 IMDb still going strong. The movie could win screenplay and it could win actress. Is not quite guaranteed those awards yet. And the other thing is we have to remember that guilds are so important. Poor Things isn't doing that well in terms of ensemble nominations, so I think it's gonna miss SAG Ensemble, perhaps. Even though when I watched it, I thought that is going to get SAG Ensemble. I am not so sure. In terms of winning PGA, I feel like Oppenheimer just has Oppenheimer and Barbie have an edge there. What is Poor Things going to win? WGA? Is it even, I don't even think it's eligible. That's not even going to happen before the Oscars. We can't even take that into account. It's not going to win DGA, and it's probably not going to win SAG Ensemble. So really, what is the path here? Because as we said last year, you need one of those to win. And I think all the goddamn guilds are going to be split between two movies. Me and Brother Bro are talking about this. Could be a Barbenheimer showdown. Really could be. Barbie did insane at the Critics' Choice nominations. And look, we saw what that meant for Everything Everywhere All at Once last year, overperforming. You know, I still see that movie as having some trouble with some people, although it has a lot in its favor. In terms of what it can win screenplay. It could win supporting actor, maybe. It can win song, production design, costumes. Barbie's gonna win some Oscars. Oppenheimer also has, you know, that Best Picture package that we can see. Obviously, you know, director, and then every tech. And maybe Robert Downey Jr. and or Cillian Murphy. If that movie wins directing and acting awards, I mean, it's gonna feel like that's gonna win Best Picture unless, you know, Barbie's doing really amazingly well. Or I guess if Poor Things wins actress and screenplay, but even then, like if Barbie's winning screenplay and Nolan's winning director, I think it's gonna feel like Barbenheimer. And we are seeing Barbie doing overwhelmingly well with these critics groups. Not in terms of wins, you know, Oppenheimer and Killers are, for the most part, duking out the wins. Poor Things has like a couple. Barbie doesn't really have any. The Holdovers actually has a couple. So I don't think I can quite say Barbie's gonna win. I'm gonna go with Oppenheimer for now. Yes, it does feel like the typical victim of frontrunner fatigue and you know, falls for the scrappy underdog. But what's the scrappy underdog? Do we really have one? Barbie might be a movie that people consider more like socially relevant, and Oppenheimer is more like a political, serious kind of relevant. If Barbie is embraced at SAG in a way that is very warm, where like Gosling's winning and the movie's winning ensemble, then you might be like, oh, Barbie's like the heart movie that everyone's going for. But I feel like Oppenheimer is just such a juggernaut in many ways that I think that it can overcome a lot of problems that some of these early frontrunners have been facing. Killers of the Flower Moon is also a movie some people think it can win. It actually is like the critics' favorite movie of the year pretty definitively now. It's on like the most top 10s. It's won the most awards actually in terms of Best Picture. But the package, it feels like when people were trying to put together a package for The Fabelmans and they were like, well, maybe it can get director and maybe screenplay. And it's like, listen, it's probably not going to win director or screenplay, okay? And some people think it can win screenplay. I think that would be more likely to go to Poor Things or American Fiction. I don't see what makes people think Killers of the Flower Moon feels like a screenplay winner. Obviously, if it won Best Picture, sure, but I don't know if I quite buy it. And you know, Lily Gladstone could win. The Holdovers is doing extremely well. Sure, the Globes did not embrace it as much as they could have, but most critics groups are going harder for it than you would expect, and it is actually won more screenplay awards than any other movie. Maestro's doing pretty well. It's got a lot of nominations it's going for. American Fiction's doing well. It is in the game. It's a staple of the category. And Past Lives rounds out what we can now call, well, nearly, I would say maybe nearly a locked in 8. I guess we can't call anything locked in yet. You know, for all we know, Past Lives could miss PGA and then we'll get really scared. And then you got 9 and 10 and everyone's debating what it could be. Now, the optimistic answer is to say that this will be Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest, or perhaps May, December. Those are the choices that I would like to see them do. Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest are performing a little spotty. Zone of Interest did secure a great Los Angeles Film Critics win. Congratulations, picture and director, my God. Something that felt really needed at the time. So that's important that it actually got something big like that. In terms of critics groups, not all of them are going for it. The Critics' Choice completely skipped out on Anatomy and Zone of Interest. I was afraid that they would, and they did. You know, they're a little bit cowards. They're a little closed-minded, shall we say. The Oscars, perhaps more open-minded, perhaps, hopefully. Zone of Interest has a lot of potential noms it could go for. It's like maybe score, maybe cinematography, maybe sound, maybe production design. Director still feels like a strong possibility. Adapted screenplay, there's definitely a slot for it. So I feel like that movie will do well on the BAFTA long list. I hope it will get sound and score on the Oscar shortlist, but it also hasn't even come out yet, so I can still feel perhaps the movie's warming up. Now, Anatomy of a Fall has come out, but I think what this movie has going for it is that I still feel good about it in screenplay and actress. And in fact, it is winning more international awards in general than Zone of Interest. Not by an overwhelming amount, but it's in the game. You know, being in actress and screenplay puts it in the game. It's a pretty likable movie. The audience scores are good. I don't know what it is with critics like being very spotty about whether or not they include these movies, but I think they're both maybes. I think that they may both make it in. May, December, I know we got a little excited. Not me, actually. I never actually officially had this in the 10, but some people got excited because this released on Netflix and everyone was freaking out. Everyone's screaming about Charles Melton. And yeah, Charles Melton, I think he'll be okay. Maybe Julianne Moore will be okay. A lot of people are sold on the screenplay. Ultimately, May, December, the audience scores are kind of expected. Like there's something lacking there, and it's because a lot of people don't know what to do with the movie. The characters are a little complex. It doesn't really tell you what to think of them. And some people are like, I don't really know what the point of that was. That's why I think the movie is not going to go that far at the Oscars, but I think it will secure, you know, a couple noms. The Color Purple. What's going on with The Color Purple? It was missing shit. It was missing AFI, NBR. They seem like they would go for the musicals. Then it hits Critics' Choice. Well, listen, I've seen The Color Purple now, and I have to say, it did not sell me that it would be an Oscar contender. Usually I fall for musicals, and Brother Bro felt the same way, if not even more underwhelmed than me. Danielle Brooks didn't convince me that she was winning. She's very good. She'll get nominated, but she didn't convince me that she was gonna be so strong that she'd be this year's Ariana DeBose. I just don't see it that way. I think the movie in general is just a little bit weak. Recent Word has even said like studios are not marketing musicals as musicals because they know that test audiences are not interested. I don't think that there is going to be a world where this thing is a box office smash. Unfortunately, I don't really think people are that interested in musicals, and people will feel that they've seen this before. Not even Fantasia is getting in Critics' Choice. It has a very slim number of nominations really going for it, so I wouldn't put The Color Purple in. Spider-Verse, AFI, NBR, some people got excited, but then Critics' Choice, like they didn't even do their job on that one. They didn't even do their job. That is who I thought would go out for the movie. But they seem, again, to care about like what they are supposed to predict for the Oscar, unfortunately. So Spider-Verse, I don't think it's happening. I just don't think it is. Saltburn, I think the Critics' Choice is going to be an anomaly. That movie will be lucky to have one nomination, perhaps cinematography, perhaps Rosamund Pike. That's what I think it can go for. Everything else, I don't think so. Air, we can practically tuck it in. You know, I will officially tuck it in. Brother Bro has to be here. And I think we need to wait for if it misses like SAG or PGA. I think it can get SAG and still be nearly tucked in, but if it gets SAG and PGA, then, you know, we can't tuck it in. Again, we haven't heard from the industry, so I won't officially tuck it in, but I'll just say Air's not doing that well. It's actually getting some editing and screenplay nominations, so it's not like completely nowhere, but not doing that well. For Best Director, Nolan is sweeping with critics. Not that surprising. I think everybody wants it to be his year. We will it to be. It will be so. No matter if that movie wins picture or not. It's like the only movie that I would confidently say is probably going to be in the top 2 no matter what scenario we're in. Lanthimos, Greta Gerwig, Martin Scorsese, they're doing very well. I think that they are all very good bets. Now, this is the first time that I have Greta Gerwig in. What's going on here? I kept insisting that the Oscars would be too snobby, that they would snub her like they did Denis Villeneuve. If Barbie really is in contending to win territory, and I think because it's winning screenplay, we have to consider it that, and possibly other awards. And I think Greta Gerwig's not gonna miss if it really is that strong. Now, sometimes movies miss director even when they win Best Picture, But with a movie like Barbie that's so ambitious, has such a voice to it, it would not only be incredibly unjust, but I think that's a stretch. The way that Barbie's overperforming is reminding me a bit of Everything Everywhere, in where I'm like, okay, I might have to like squeeze this into more stuff. Like, might have to get this in there for editing as well. Might have to consider Margot Robbie and America Ferrera. Like, you have to consider nearly everything with this movie. Like, it may be going for 10 or more. And because they love it that much, I think that Greta Gerwig is going to get in. And also, I'm starting to wonder, like, was I being like the people who said that the Daniels will never get in for Everything Everywhere? Because last year, I was never that person. But this year, I feel like saying Greta Gerwig's not going to get in, it's almost some kind of denial. It's kind of trickery. And I'm not going to be part of that anymore. Glazer, can he still get in? Yes, he can, I think. Good God, this could be an amazing lineup if it ends up exactly like we're predicting. Ruben Östlund didn't get, like, shit from critics. And Vinterberg didn't get that much either. I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch, and especially, obviously, if I think Zone of Interest has a shot in picture. It should do well at BAFTA. It really should do well at BAFTA. The LA critics win shows that it's appealing to that type of crowd that you need to impress, I think, to get that, like, Oscars Directors Branch type of nomination. Now, Alexander Payne, I was very gung-ho on him for a long time because I said, how will he miss when he made it in for his 3 other films? This is one of his strongest Oscar contenders that he's ever done. People are praising the shit out of it. It's very stylish. And the only reason, like, I actually can't make a good case for him not getting in. The only thing I can say is that I just think the others are more likely. That's it. Could something crazy happen where he squeezes his way in past a Lanthimos or something? Too much of a stretch for me to predict. It just is too much of a stretch. The fact that the Globes didn't embrace him, we can never say for sure. Like, if the OG HFPA would have embraced Payne, because they always do. The DGA didn't nominate him for Nebraska, so they could just not nominate him, and I think that they'll put Cooper in. I think he could surprise on the Oscars, and he did get Critics' Choice, but I just think that the others are making real good cases right now. Celine Song, now getting the Golden Globe nomination was excellent. Glad to see that she's not as dead as some thought. Always hoped that there was a road for her to get back in, and there certainly is. Every single A24 movie that's ever been in Best Picture has gotten a Best Director nomination. I don't think that Past Lives seems out of character even for the director's branch to go for, but again, it's really like the competition's strong, and Past Lives isn't so much of a top 5 contender as some of these other films. Bradley Cooper, it's not so hard to say that he'll get snubbed when I think the movie's probably weaker overall than Star is Born, even though his vision this time is even maybe more pronounced, maybe even more well-respected from a craft standpoint. I actually think Todd Haynes has a shot here. My God, do they owe this man a nomination by now? Unfortunately, he's probably not going to make it. And I don't think the movie's even as strong as Carol. But in another year, maybe with less competition, I could see him being that, like, Cannes surprise director nomination. Why not? Like Bennett Miller for Foxcatcher. But I do think that's probably going to be Glazer this year. Cord Jefferson, Justine Triet, people aren't going out for her. I don't think that the movie's going to do that. I just don't think that she's going to get in. I don't quite believe it much anymore. Best Actress, Emma Stone and Lily Gladstone are pretty much the only ones who are winning stuff. Sandra Hüller won a couple awards. I'm sad that she didn't get more. I want Sandra Hüller to be sweeping. Lily Gladstone, critics have been going very, very, very hard for. But also, as we know, they've been real fans of Killers of the Flower Moon. And I think the Oscars will be too. I mean, Poor Things, Killers of the Flower Moon, I think, you know, they could be embraced very similarly at the Oscars. Emma Stone, though, I mean, I still think that, like, when it comes to the formula for winning an Oscar, a lead acting Oscar, in terms of the showiness, she's absolutely more there than Lily Gladstone is. And the fact that she's somewhat competitive in this race for wins, currently I have her at 7 wins, Gladstone at 11. I mean, that is a race. Sometimes people get very carried away thinking that if you're just sweeping critics awards, that means you're going to win, but that is not the case. And typically the Oscar winner will show some level of strength in terms of being able to win some stuff, even if they are not the critics sweeper. I'm gonna go just with like a little bit of hunch and say that she still is number 1, but I really think that her and Gladstone are close. Now, after seeing Maestro, I have to say, I did think maybe Carey Mulligan can win this. She is doing enough. She is not being embraced by critics much at all. In fact, they don't even care that much to nominate her, which I think is unfortunate. She's really good in the film. I don't know if that's gonna bear out. Like, maybe she will just start winning, like, Globe or SAG or something, but it doesn't feel like the most likely thing. It doesn't feel as likely as the other two. I really thought Sandra Hüller would be doing like even better than this with critics, but you know, they've got solid choices with Emma Stone and Lily Gladstone. She made it into Critics' Choice, even though they didn't like the movie. I am going to keep predicting her. I think she'll get BAFTA. I think she'll get snubbed for SAG, but I think that she'll get into the Oscar. Greta Lee. Fortunately, critics are going out for her. She has Critics' Choice and Golden Globe as well. Glad to see that she is not dead like some thought. You know, I really, you know, to be fair to me, I really never had her like below 6 or 7 this whole year, because as long as that movie's in picture, I think she hangs on. But with the competition, I am still not convinced that she can make it in. I actually might have her at number 5 because I think Fantasia Barrino, for her not to get in for The Color Purple at the Critics' Choice, I mean, I don't know what is going on there. And Fantasia Barrino was quite fantastic in The Color Purple. She's just quite fantastic. But she is more subdued than some of the supporting performers, so I guess that's maybe why, even though that's the strength of her performance. But they might not embrace this movie that much, and they might just say only Danielle Brooks. So I think that this last slot is between Margot Robbie and Greta Lee. And I didn't think that I would say it was between Margot Robbie. It's not that crazy that she got Globe. It's not that crazy that she got Critics' Choice. Time come, and time be, she's gonna get SAG. What are the implications of that? She is being embraced by critics more than I thought she would. Not just the Critics' Choice either. People are really saying, hey, she was Barbie, all right? We love Barbie, she was Barbie. We're putting her in. Maybe part of me just wants to resist, go with my gut and say, look, the Oscars aren't quite gonna go for Margot Robbie. I really don't know what to do here. Might lean towards Greta Lee, but it's a little bit hope-dicting, but I don't know if I should be sold on Margot Robbie or not. Natalie Portman could surprise, but I don't think it's quite leaning that way. Annette Bening, you know, yeah, maybe she gets SAG, like whatever. It'd be kind of whatever to me. I don't think she seems that strong. Kaylee Spaney, you know, not really taking off that hard. Best Actor, Cillian Murphy's winning a lot of awards right now. That's not surprising. We kind of thought he would sweep. Perhaps surprising, though not crazy surprising, is that Paul Giamatti is really in second place here with Critics Awards, and I love to see it. I think he would be a great winner. I think he is maybe a little bit in contention to win. I think he'll get the Golden Globe. I don't think Jeffrey Wright's gonna beat him. I'm not like feeling that people are really wanting this to be his year over Cillian Murphy, but it's possible. But also, of course, we have Bradley Cooper, who's doing the most typical type of Oscar performance. And, you know, in some ways I feel like I have to go with that. But at the same time, what if Bradley Cooper is Austin Butler in Elvis? Because he's actually not really winning that much shit so far. And that's that's the position that Elvis was in last year. Brendan Fraser was more in like a Giamatti situation where he's doing very well. He wins some. And then Cillian Murphy's in like a Colin Farrell situation. Now, I'm not comparing these three. I think Cillian Murphy's performance is far more Oscar baity than what Colin Farrell did. Paul Giamatti's less so than Brendan Fraser. If Brother Bro was here, he'd probably yell at me and make me pick Cooper. I just don't know. We do think Oppenheimer is winning, and as long as Oppenheimer is winning, there is a very real possibility Cillian Murphy takes that Oscar. People do really want Cillian Murphy to win, but of course, most of the people that you get opinions from on the internet like to dunk on method acting, like to dunk on Bradley Cooper trying too hard for Maestro, but I don't think that sentiment is carrying in Hollywood probably. I think that they're probably really into that shit still. I'm not done with my thoughts here. I think that Cillian Murphy actually is interestingly a type of populist pick. Like if you were to interview random people, everyone would say, well, Cillian Murphy's coming for the Oscar, right? Like everybody just thinks that's going to happen. While I think we could compare it to like Michael Keaton seeming like he's gonna win for Birdman, because I feel like the internet at this point in the year would be so goddamn sure that Michael Keaton's gonna win and Eddie Redmayne, people just don't care. And look, the Oscars went for the showiest performance. Cillian Murphy, though, like the fact that that is the biggest blockbuster biopic like ever, and that he played the lead in that movie, and he did do a voice, and he did, it's like a little more subtle type of transformation. I think it might even override the amount that Cooper is doing, the weight of the makeup. I think many people are being dismissive of Cooper. I still agree with that, but I am so 50-50 on this teetering. In fact, when I filmed this video, I said Cooper's gonna win. Cillian Murphy, he's just very humble and likable, and I think Bradley Cooper's also very charming. And also, the amount of awards that Bradley Cooper is winning is kind of similar to like an Austin Butler, where you're not quite getting there. And of course, Bradley Cooper has more of an overdue thing going on than Austin Butler, who's like the new kid on the block. You know, we can't compare everything to everything. And so we take this year at face value when we say Oppenheimer was a mega biopic, and the person who led that movie, who everybody was praising and loving and who's having an amazing year, might just take an Oscar. Leaving Giamatti as a third place and stating that he is a contender to win. Jeffrey Wright's doing very well. He is not missing. People want him to come along with the movie. We were wondering if maybe he's a little less showy and so he won't, but I think people are really loving that character, and I think that he is going to be safe. He's looking good. And then you have Colman Domingo and Leonardo DiCaprio, who are making it into, you know, Globe and Critics' Choice. That's kind of whatever. They are doing okay with critics' nominations. Now, Colman Domingo really feels like SAG would go for him. And it makes me think that perhaps Leonardo DiCaprio will be snubbed at SAG. It'd be kind of insane, but it almost, in some ways, makes the most sense. Maybe it just makes the most sense. And I think people are just going so hard for Lily Gladstone that they're like kind of meh about DiCaprio and De Niro. But at the same time, you know, even if Colman Domingo got SAG, I think DiCaprio being this showy in a lead in a Scorsese film that is a massive contender, it'd be kind of a crazy snub. So I can't quite say that he will make it in over Colman Domingo, who's really looking to, you know, at best accompany his nomination with a song nomination. It very much helps if you are in a Best Picture movie. Both of them are giving the types of performances that you see them and you instantly think like, well, that gets an Oscar nomination. So it's quite a difficult five to decide on. Colman Domingo really is doing like everything you need to do to get nominated. And maybe people feel like, look, we've awarded DiCaprio in the past. I feel like that, oh, it's the best performance of his career thing that everybody was saying I can. Even me a little bit. I feel like that has worn off, but I just can't quite call a DiCaprio snub right now. I feel like actors do love him. Andrew Scott, I think, is next in line. He's got the Golden Globe. He didn't get Critics' Choice. He hasn't won anything. Like he didn't win like New York Critics or LA Critics. So they're not really going out for him in that way. I don't think he's looking that hot for the nomination. I think he might get BAFTA. And as long as he gets BAFTA, I think there's a chance he could steal, but I can't put him above the 6 right now. I don't think that many other people really have much of a shot here. Barry Keoghan, Koji Yakusho, wish him the best of luck. Don't think it's happening. Zac Efron, Iron Claw. I mean, look, he could rise when the movie comes out. Some people are thinking that he's doing definitely enough. Supporting actress, Divine Joy Randolph has an insane sweep. She is like Ke Huy Quan. It's insane. There have been 18 or 19 Critics Awards, and she hasn't lost an award. How do you bet against that? All year we thought Danielle Brooks, that makes sense. She is going to be screaming and crying and singing. Having seen the movie, she does do that in parts, but I thought she was going to have like one scene that was just such a slam dunk, nobody could deny it. That was like the impression I had, but I feel like it didn't come. And so, even though Divine Joy Randolph, when I watched the movie, I thought, she'll get nominated but not win, people want to do it. And it is much safer to predict her than Brooks because that's a Best Picture movie and Color Purple is very much on the cusp. Don't think Emily Blunt's coming near this. I think Divine Joy Randolph might have it easy, and I think she might kind of easily take every major award. Might not even be that hard. I mean, last year, I guess, Ke Huy Quan lost to BAFTA. BAFTA could go insane and give it to somebody else and be weird. They could just go for Emily Blunt and it'd be bizarre. These last two slots remains like the most difficult acting category, I think. Jodie Foster has the Globe and the Critics' Choice. She's doing very well. Even critics groups are like giving her noms, and it's like, you guys, were you in Deniad? They don't care about Annette Bening either. They're just like giving it to Jodie Foster. So in many ways, she seems like she's gonna get SAG, maybe miss BAFTA, and then, get in. Might not even be that hard. At the same time, that movie going for only one nomination, far from guaranteed. Definitely not a lock. But that's the thing about this category, is there are a lot of contenders who are not in Best Picture movies. So another one is Julianne Moore. The movie's on the cusp for Best Picture. I think Charles Melton will probably get in. She's been getting in everywhere, really. She's been getting some of the most nominations, but there's still something that makes me think she could be snubbed. If the movie is leaving voters cold, and I could see us being disappointed that it feels like she was actually going to get there, because I really do want Julianne Moore in. America Ferrera got Critics' Choice. She has not been completely ignored. She's not getting in like absolutely everywhere, but I think there's something to this. And is that if the Oscars really have Barbie fever and they're nominating like Margot Robbie and shit, then maybe America Ferrera can get in. And the advantage she has is that she is in a Best Picture movie, and other people are not. She has a monologue. A lot of people talked about her. You know, if I don't have her in, then I'm going for 2 out of 5 matching Best Picture. And that's not that that's impossible, but America Ferrera in some ways is a good bet because of that. Other things I would consider, Rosamund Pike, I'm getting a little bit of a feeling about it. I know she got Globe. I know she missed Critics' Choice, even though that did get Picture. But I'm getting a feeling about it that, like, because there's still a light flickering there for Rosamund Pike, and it doesn't seem like she's totally dead by any means, I am sus that she is gonna slip in like J.K. Simmons for Being the Ricardos. I know it's not the same thing because he's coattailing like the leads, but I just had a feeling about J.K. Simmons the whole year. I was like, and you know, Brother Bro was sitting there being like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. And I was like, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about it. And there's part of me that thinks that might be Rosamund Pike. Rosamund Pike and America Ferrera seem SAG-friendly. Jodie Foster seems SAG-friendly. I actually think Julianne Moore, she's a maybe for SAG. That's when people might get a little scared. Other options, because I don't think we're done here. Rachel McAdams has been doing extremely well with critics groups, but somehow couldn't make it into Critics' Choice. I don't understand it. She's number 2 with critics groups, tied with Julianne Moore for how many nominations she has. Why couldn't she get into Critics' Choice? They even nominated it for screenplay. What's going on here? I'm sad and upset that Rachel McAdams hasn't been getting more attention. SAG, save her. Save her, SAG. You know, once again, the Critics' Choice didn't really do their job on this one, and that's why I can't put her in. But I do think she's in contention. She's back in contention. Viola Davis hasn't been completely gone, but I can't put her in. Sandra Hüller for Zone of Interest. She's gotten a couple noms, but I would still be very surprised to see her get in. At the same time, maybe she's like that crazy supporting actress surprise. I don't know. Supporting actor is quite split in terms of who's winning shit. You got Robert Downey Jr. with 7 wins. You got Charles Melton with 4, Ryan Gosling with 6, and Mark Ruffalo with 3. So these are the top 4, I would say. I think Robert Downey Jr., I still have him at number 1. It seems like everybody's pretty on board so far. I think Ryan Gosling is definitely a threat, especially at SAG and especially at Critics' Choice. And if Ryan Gosling won Critics' Choice and SAG, I mean, I would maybe have to predict him. If Robert Downey Jr. won the Globe and the BAFTA, it'd be a hell of a race. And interestingly enough, the category may be a small reflection of Best Picture. Because if Barbie won Best Picture, I think it would obviously increase Gosling's chances. And if Oppenheimer wins, it'll obviously make Downey Jr. very likely. So that could be perhaps a microcosm of Best Picture. Maybe it doesn't actually line up, but I think there's a fair chance that it does. Charles Melton, I think that is the best supporting performance of the year, probably. And I'm glad that he seems to be approaching being undeniable. As a newcomer to like prestige films in general, it is not easy to get in off of a movie that's not even getting into Best Picture. But I think the praise has been so effusive for him that he will actually come along. Ruffalo's doing pretty well. I think he'll be solidly in there. What about Dafoe? Dafoe is like significantly behind Ruffalo. He did make it in for Critics' Choice. And maybe he is able to do a little Judi Dench slip in there at the last minute or whatever because he is an Academy fave and he's quite good in the movie. But I do see why he's being left out. He's very good in it, but Mark Ruffalo is much more like, wow, we didn't expect this from you. I think he is definitely a contender for the 5th spot. Robert De Niro is a contender for the 5th spot. And, you know, interestingly, yeah, he is a contender for the 5th spot. He's not even locked. If you have him at 2 or 3, get him out of there. He does not belong in the top 3. Him and DiCaprio, I'm still a little worried because I feel like people care so much more about Gladstone. De Niro's pretty behind in Critics Group nominations. He's even behind Sessa, Sterling K. Brown, and Glenn Howerton. I think Dominic Sessa, if he gets in SAG, he'll be a real threat for the nomination. I would love to see it. He may have missed Globe and Critics' Choice, but again, he could pull off that SAG nom, perhaps a BAFTA nom, and still make it in. And then his movie is very strong. There's support for him. He is not dead. He's not gone. Sterling K. Brown is a Critics' Choice nomination. He's been getting some attention, but he still is kind of a mystery. And I'm just not quite sold on it. I would go with De Niro for now because even though people aren't going out for him that hard, maybe that's just one of those things that critics are just not that interested in, but the big televised awards will be. Like how Carey Mulligan's not getting that many nominations for actress, but I still have no hesitancy saying she's actually going to get in at the Oscars. And also, I mean, it makes sense to go with the 5 who've gotten Critics' Choice and Golden Globe. Maybe it's a little obvious, but it makes sense. Critics did not go out for John Majaro. Rest in peace. They didn't send him a lifeline. You know, he probably didn't have much of a chance, but they could have given a little something. Original screenplay, I think Barbie's going to win. As I've said, that movie's extremely strong. It's looking real good. I think it's very enticing that they could give Greta Gerwig an Oscar for it, especially after the year she has had. That little cherry on top is the Noah Baumbach Oscar as well. The Holdovers is actually winning a fuck ton of critics awards for screenplay. I think it does hurt that the movie is not a writer-director. We've seen a lot of those winners in the past, and especially Gerwig being the writer-director. I don't really care that it's leading with critics groups. I think it makes it number 2. Surprisingly, Past Lives isn't winning that many screenplay awards at all. But I think as long as Barbie's an original, and I think it will be, I know that the Academy is tough when it comes to actually qualifying your film for original versus adapted. You can say, oh, well, look what happened with Moonlight and Whiplash, but like those were actually based on pre-existing media. And Barbie is not based on media, it is based on a toy. And you could say, well, they've made media out of Barbie before, but that is not what Barbie the movie is adapted from, and that is why Barbie's an original, and I think the argument makes sense. I have Anatomy of a Fall. That's been doing pretty well. Has not been forgotten about, even as the critics have been nominating the movie a little less than I would like to see. I'm pretty confident the Oscars are going to pull through for it. And at number 5, look, a lot of people have May December. A lot of people are noticing that is getting a lot of screenplay attention. And it deserves it. It absolutely does. But I think for the same reasons that the movie will miss picture, because it is maybe a little odd for some, a little confusing for some, leaving some a little head scratchy, I think that will keep it out of screenplay. Many disagree. Brother Bro may disagree. I think Maestro is just a little bit safer. Now, are the critics going out for Maestro? No, not really. No, not really. But does that matter so much? Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can see how Maestro is like, oh, we don't need to do that. We sure don't need to nominate that for screenplay. It's not like it isn't dialogue heavy. It's not like there aren't meaty monologues and fight scenes. I feel like you can definitely justify putting it in. Air could also get in. It really could. It could be the movie's only nomination. It hasn't been completely forgotten about with critics either, and there aren't really many other contenders. I mean, the Iron Claw and Saltburn is pretty much it, and I don't buy those much at all. Finally, adapted screenplay. Now, this is going to be between Poor Things and American Fiction, I think. Poor Things got the Globe nomination over American Fiction, and maybe it will win Critics' Choice over American Fiction. And if it does those two things, that puts it above it. We will not see WGA. I mean, they won't even show down at WGA. American Fiction very much feels like a screenplay movie. The fact that it's kind of a staple for Best Picture, and it has like this satirical stuff going on. It is a writer-director. It feels like very modern and relevant. It's a discussion starter. And if Poor Things isn't winning Best Picture, it's very vulnerable here, actually. It's very vulnerable. I don't really get people who think Killers of the Flower Moon's gonna be in contention to win. Surely Oppenheimer will be nominated, and maybe Oppenheimer can even win if they has a really, really fucking big night. But Poor Things and American Fiction have that comedic element that I think is important. Although Poor Things is not a writer-director, but people are aware of like who the writer is, and he's a decently big name for a writer. I think people will feel pretty confident that Nolan's winning director, kind of like with Chloe Zhao for Nomadland, so there's not really a need to give him the award here. Killers of the Flower Moon, I feel like people aren't going to be like, oh, let's spread the love and give Scorsese his screenplay Oscar. It's like, I don't know. It doesn't have like standout-y dialogue. The critics groups actually think Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is the number 5. That's been doing shockingly well with critics groups, and maybe it has a real chance, but I just don't know if that movie is just like actually campaigning or not. But I think The Zone of Interest may benefit from a late rise. It's probably more likely to get the BAFTA nom. Although actually, because All of Us Strangers, right? All of Us Strangers might get that BAFTA nom. And All of Us Strangers did get a Critics' Choice nomination for screenplay. But I don't know. I think if Zone of Interest is in picture, I'm going to put it here. And again, not confident about that, but I will go with Zone of Interest. Spider-Verse has basically no shot. Other movies don't really have much of a shot at all. And those are updated above the line Oscar predictions. Stay tuned for the shortlist reaction video, and I guess below the line predictions when they come. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Which contender are you in denial about?